Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is John Doyle. As Katie said, I am an instructor candidate for the Forensics 578 course, and I also work for Mandiant as my day job. I'm here to talk to you guys about career planning. This is often one of the kind of overlooked and more daunting things that analysts have to deal with. And I ask myself the question, why is that? We're a self-selected field of highly intelligent individuals. Why is it that this is a scary topic? And the more I kind of think about it, the more I realize it's easier to get lost in the work that we do. And sometimes we kind of have to pull ourselves back and make some conscious decisions to actually focus on investing in ourselves, to have a systematic way to plan our career and where we want to go. Realizing that this is kind of a scary topic, I have gone through painstaking efforts to make this as low maintenance as possible, right? We're going to have some fun. We're going to enjoy ourselves. I'm going to entertain you throughout, as well as provide you with a lot of kind of practical advice, practical guidance that I've kind of grown and learned over the years, learning from my peers as well as myself. So without further ado, let me quickly introduce who I am. According to a Kaspersky caricature artist, I have a very large forehead and a fantastic beard. I think he was right on at least one of those two counts. So I work for Mandiant, that's my day job. I've been in the field for about 15 years, cybersecurity 15 years, CTI 12 of which. My background is digital forensics. I usually focus on supporting operational and strategic level customers. At least I did when I was an analyst. Now I'm a consultant helping build CTI programs, assess and mature and build them on the roadmap. I spent 10 years in the government space working for the CIA. I was like the CISSP, an inch deep and a mile wide, just on all of the intrusion sets, where I decided to kind of pivot a little bit, get smart on North Korea and Russia. During my time, though, when I was on that transnational team, focused, looking across the board, I was a team lead. So I had the ability to kind of influence decisions that leadership was making. I had a chance to kind of help develop our cadre as we're moving forward. And part of that, I think, is going to come out during some of the practical advice I give. So to make this entertaining, kind of, we're going to make it immersive. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Question number one, by show of hands, and don't worry, people online, I will recap the results. Show of hands, who is responsible for your career? Who thinks it's senior leadership? These are not mutually exclusive, by the way. I've got like 3 hands up, 4, 5, maybe. Okay. What about first line supervisors? You can vote more than once, guys. It's not mutually exclusive. Okay, so more hands are up now. So we're probably at about 20 to 30% in the room. How about human resources or people operations? Yeah, no? Very sad, like only 4 hands. You guys don't think highly of HR. How about you? You are in charge of your career. Okay, that is exactly what I expected. Almost all of the hands went up in the room. Fantastic. Now, I need you to repeat after me. Hi. Hi. It's me. I'm the problem, it's me. Taylor Swift, rude. These people are not the problem, they are the solution. Slight public service announcement. If you are Taylor Swift and watching this, please do not sue me. Also, if you are Taylor Swift and watching this, please DM me. That would be life-changing. Okay, question number 2. Who here has ever engaged in any sort of formal career planning beyond maybe an annual career conversation? Yes? No? Okay, we've got a few hands up. That's fantastic. Keep those hands up, by the way. Of those, how many of you are managers? A fair amount. Okay, cool. Are your direct reports here? Maybe not. Okay, don't want to say. Totally fine. You're going to have some interesting conversations coming out of this one. All right, I love it. Let's get into the substance. I'm going to give you kind of a quick overview of how we're going to progress for the duration of this talk. I like to think of career planning as a process, because it really is, right? There's multiple steps that go into it. It falls into multiple feedback loops. I've created a lot of mental models for you as part of this. So we'll start talking about career planning as a process. We'll then move to taking an inventory of our own skills. That is a fantastic starting point. We can understand where we are as analysts developing in this profession, identify goals to move forward to, do a gap analysis, identify milestones, identify ways in which we can satisfy, the equivalent of those intelligence requirements or our skill uplift, and then use that to feed into a conversation with our leadership team. So thinking through how we can actually plan strategically, plan smartly, will lead us to how we develop career maps. These roadmaps act as a fundamental predicate for having career conversations. By the way, it also acts as a way for us to manage expectations with our leadership team about what we want to do so they can flag opportunities that they see fit moving forward. Super helpful to do. More often than not, I find that analysts, usually it comes year end, right? They expect to get promoted and they're not, but disappointed. And I usually ask the question, did you have a conversation? Was your leadership aware of your intentions? And I was like, no, I didn't. Okay. They're not mind readers and they have day jobs. So making your ambitions known is kind of key, kind of a key predicate here. So we'll talk about that under the guise of self-advocacy. And as Rob Lee pointed at a deeper summit earlier or late in 2022, finding your chat, finding those people who can help you along the way. I'll wrap up with kind of a nice little story and then some additional resources for us. I like mental models. That is interesting. Pause. For some reason, my little diagram is not showing. Okay, picture this as a circular diagram here. Fabulous. I've created a very simplified mental model here that starts with understanding yourself, understanding what skills you have available. We all come to this with a variety of different skills, irrespective of whether you're just brand new to CTI or whether you've been a practitioner for years. Having a good understanding of that feeds then into a cycle. We identify our goals, we understand where we want to kind of grow and build to. We look at relevant timelines, we put that on a roadmap and we use that to facilitate a discussion. Now it's kind of weird that I said facilitate a discussion. Why aren't we just kind of going full speed? Well, oftentimes we might have to ask for resources. Those are out of our control. So instead, we put it on a roadmap, we get executive buy-in, we get buy-in for resources, and then we can move forward. Periodically, we will check in, and arguably you can put kind of a feedback loop here in almost every one of these steps along the way. However, I like to think about it at the end. You measure against your milestones every 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Is what I'm doing getting me closer to my goals? Are there ways that I can change my workload? Are there things that I can do outside of my daily activity that will otherwise help me reach those goals? If you've had the conversation with your leadership team and they've bought in, you can revisit this. Hey, I have a lot on my plate right now. It's not really helping me get to where we agreed to. Is there things you can take off and assign to somebody else and I can work on X, Y, and Z projects that will get me towards my goals? Cool. When we talk about career planning, one of the things that I like to point out is we have control over the things we control, and we can influence the things we can influence. There are going to be externalities, economic externalities, things we can't control. But we can best position ourselves for optimal solutions. So what we'll try and do is we'll try and position ourselves vis-a-vis a planning process that will let us reach those goals in a timely manner. And if for whatever reason we can, that's a discussion. Are my expectations out of whack? Are they misaligned? How can we get there? How can we build towards it? Business needs will sometimes drive a protracted timeline for you reaching your goals. And then on the flip side, luck sometimes happens too. There are plenty of colleagues that I used to work with that we colloquially called them golden children. They got whatever they wanted. That is not the normal. Don't expect it to be normal. So I usually plan for worst case scenario and go from there, because then I'm pleasantly surprised and I've managed my own expectations. Where do you start? That's a tough question. The self-inventory is a perfect way to start. Think of it like a character sheet. We all have character sheets. We all have attributes. We all have traits. Again, irrespective of when we come in or where we come in, we all come in with different skills. Those skills have different scorings, things that we can measure against. Natively, intuitively, we may have different attribute modifiers. So take myself, for example. I am soft-spoken, I am opinionated, I am feisty, and I have this awesome red beard, and I'm a little short. Maybe I'm like a barbarian dwarf. That might give me +2 modifier for strength. Over time, I practice. I get used to CTI. I've had a host of different RFIs that I've been able to solicit and respond to across a spectrum of different asks. I now increase my dexterity modifier as I start to level up. If you're wondering, where in the world do I start? What skills do I have? How do I even measure that? Well, pointed out in the keynote, this field has evolved quite a bit. So last year, the folks over at Mandiant put out the CTI Core Competencies, essentially an enumeration of all of these different skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities. What it's done is it's provided us a way to then start to understand, okay, what are those key characteristics? So think of this kind of like the MITRE attack of TTPs for our analytic skills. It's kind of a good allegory there. I've recently expounded upon this, so you now have a spreadsheet which is actually mapped to various roles, some of which we'll explore in just a little bit. If you use this as a starting point, it should help. It should help you get a sense of what I need to be, what skills I need to have, what experiences I need in play, be a strategic analyst, be an operational support analyst, to be a more tactically supported analyst, right, across the spectrum there. If you're going through, hopefully you're asking questions, how do I get there? How do I build those skills? What are the ways in which I can start to demonstrate those competencies over time? This ends up being a fundamental for us to do gap analysis, to understand what the delta is and how we can start to fill some of those gaps. As I was constructing this, I was thinking, okay, well, what is a good way, a good parody that some individuals might know? So SMART is an acronym here that I usually see used quite a bit when we're talking about performance reviews or writing objectives that we're going to try and complete as they relate to mapping to OKRs for organizations. However, there's a lot of parallels that we can draw from as we're thinking about what those goals are and how we want to achieve those. Once we've got our self-inventory in play, we understand the assessment. We can then take that information, do a gap analysis, understanding, are my goals realistic? If your goal is, I want to be the CISO, it's not completely out of the question. It's coming up with a formulaic plan that will get you there in a timely manner. If you're coming in at the ground up, you might have to develop additional experiences, to develop different skill sets. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit too, right? So when we look at filling those gaps, they come in one of two forms. Do we have resources internal? Do we have existing trainings? Do we have existing roadmaps? Clearly, you guys don't think HR helps based on my survey earlier. That's okay. That's not on me. That's on you guys. But we can start to understand, okay, I've done my due diligence. I have looked internally and we do not have the relevant assignments. We do not have the relevant trainings. We do not have relevant rotational assignments that would otherwise allow me to start to fill some of these gaps. So how do you fill them? Well, that's when you go external. So identifying training, identifying different learning opportunities that otherwise will get you there. Sometimes this involves doing coursework on your own, working on kind of projects on the side. If you make it known to organizations, especially leadership in, I would say, cultures that have the liberty, they usually allow you and flag some different opportunities that would be helpful for you, whether it's side saddling or mentoring. All of these different opportunities can kind of avail themselves. But keep in mind, SMART. Now, some of you probably came to this talk because you thought I was going to talk about how to get you promoted. So obligatorily, I have to at least talk about career ladders. You have usually one of two tracks when you're thinking about a career ladder. You either eventually go the people manager route or you go the individual contributor route. There are some trade-offs though. So as you're goal setting, as you're thinking about specific job role you want to get to, I'd implore you to ask why. If your goal is to get promoted, I'd ask you why. Is it status? Is it going to help you in some way get more organizational reach? Is it compensation? all of these funnel into larger discussions with your leadership team. You don't have to move up to maybe get more compensation. You don't have to move up to get more responsibility. However, once you've identified what you want and you've had that discussion with your leadership team, they can start to spot those opportunities for you. Now, cautionary tale. If your goal is to run up the career ladder as quick as possible, you might face some trade-offs. You might lose out on experiential opportunities. So if you wanted to go take a rotational assignment to be an incident responder, chances are you can't do that when you're at a senior manager level. Oops. In government speak, there was a certain GS grade that you essentially were stymied, at least at my old organization, of which you were viewed as too valuable of a resource on the team. So they would not let you leave. It would be very hard to make that justification. So do consider that as you're thinking about what options exist. Instead, maybe it's try different things, humble, see what resources otherwise are around. I want to show you guys a career map that I created shortly after starting at Mandiant. So I was with the company for roughly 6 months. This is sanitized, by the way. All the stuff that I'm going to show you is completely sanitized. For myself, where I was in my role, I was looking for upward mobility. And I was looking for organizational reach to help influence strategic direction. I was looking for more responsibilities, more accountability. I broke my roadmap down into 2 different tracks. So I'm on the individual contributor side of the house. I presented my management with essentially 2 listings, which predicated this roadmap. If I go this way, I can develop these skills. If I go this way, I can develop these skills. Ultimately, I use that to justify a conversation about training. What are the different experiences? What are the different trainings that I need to get to the point in which you want me to, and that I want to? I used 3 categories here, technical, soft skills, and others, something like that. Now that I'm thinking about it, if I went to revisit this in 2023, I probably would change this a little bit, more aligned to kind of what I laid out in the core competencies, where it would be focused more on business acumen, leadership, technical skills. Soft skills is another one too that's critically important, or I guess we're calling it emotional IQ these days. So understanding what you want to do, laying it on a timeline like this, really helps you have that career development conversation with your leadership team. We talked about it, actually. So me and my boss at the time, and he said, yeah, this looks good. What I got from that was, cool. So here's what things are going to cost. Here's what's internal. You still good with it? Yeah, I guess. We got some money right now. It's fine. Awesome. Fantastic. Now I've got a resource commit. Now I can start planning what the timing actually looked like. One of the things I will caution you about also from a career planning perspective, because we are all eager, we are all very ambitious here in this field. We're a self-selected crowd. Don't put too much on your plate. I put the term up here, shift happens. First off, it's a fantastic book. Second of all, it's true. You don't know what the business is going to do. You don't know how it's going to change. You don't know if the leadership is going to change. Likewise, you don't necessarily have control over things in your personal life. There are externalities. There are things that might creep up, elder care, family planning, etc. Right? Those are all decisions that you need to balance as you're thinking about the roadmap. I was just with a former colleague last night, and he essentially was like, look, guy, I'm just coasting right now. And that's totally fine. Burnout sometimes happens too. So for him, it's I'm pausing my career development because I just need the mental break. That's fine. When we're thinking about actually tracking your progress, I use a brag sheet. Anyone heard of a brag sheet before? Show of hands. About maybe 20% of you guys have heard of a brag sheet. Totally fine, not a problem. The brag sheet allows you to capture your accolades, showcase your fantastic performance. I use Excel because it's the best tool ever. So why not use Excel? And what I do here is I lay out from my field name convention all of the different attributes that I'm going for. You can also use this for performance review because I have a terrible memory. So come end of year, I'm not going to remember all the things I did and the impact it had. Lay out all of the different attributes you want over those fields. And then date it. Date when you've done these things and how they actually map. I've created a template for you if you want to use it. So if you go to tinyurl.com/brag-sheet-template, it'll take you to an exemplar brag sheet. You're welcome. I will flip stop something. Even though you can use the brag sheet for career conversations and even career planning, your career discussions with your leadership team should not just be once a year, and it especially should not be the same conversation with your performance review. Oftentimes, newer managers commingle the two. Don't let that happen. Career conversations should happen routinely and recurringly. One of the best pieces of advice I received from my first manager when I joined the government agency that I worked for was, hey, we're going to have these periodic conversations. You at the junior level are going to be in receive mode for a lot of these beginning ones. As you move up, I expect you to drive the conversation. The takeaway from me was, I am in charge of my own career. He's there to be a facilitator, to help me understand what is in the realm of possible and how we can achieve those outcomes, which is really empowering. But I was fortunate in that I had a really good manager who could be able to facilitate that, who could tell me that. I don't make that expectation for all first-time managers out there. As we're thinking about justification, as we're thinking about growth, tie your justification language for whatever you're doing back to two things. One, how is this going to make you better at what you do today? And two, how will this make you a more valuable employee in the future? If you take a rotational assignment, you get benefit of doing things like understanding workflows of the respective teams that you support. So on the strategic side, if you go kind of do a partial rotation or spend 20% of your time in various different meetings with your cyber risk colleagues, you'll start to understand their workflows. You'll start to understand their frame of reference. And as a result, you can write your products. You can start to capture data sources and turn that into intelligence they need using a nomenclature that's familiar to them. Likewise, if you're looking to get more effective at supporting your operational colleagues, you look at this from the incident response perspective, go talk to them. This is a more natural marriage, right? They usually understand the value of CTI to help speed up their investigations, to minimize dwell time, to identify adversary activities and where to go next. However, they might use some language that's unfamiliar to you. So one of the things that I got to do when I was at Mandiant was support some of the investigations as an incident responder. I took a rotation that was fantastic and super overwhelming. Thank you for all of you who do incident response. One of the things that I came out with is they use terms like high fidelity indicator of compromised. Well, what's that? It's like top tier of the pyramid of pain, or like what? It was just a different nomenclature that I wasn't used to hearing, but I got to learn. As a result, I was able to provide them with more useful information. This is one of those products that I wrote shortly thereafter, a nice hunt primer in a way that they actually can consume it. So instead of using them as a stakeholder directly, I was able to actually sit with them, understand how they were processing the information. I understood their workflows, I understood the terminology. Likewise, if you're interested in getting a little deeper on vulnerability intelligence and supporting the patch management teams or the server support team, desktop support teams, there you go. I've mapped all of this out for you. So if you go to the extensible version of the Cyber Threat Intelligence Core Competencies, tinyurl.com/CTI-Core-Competencies, you will see this. There are 3 different tabs there, essentially job requirements written out for them. And for completeness, I put this tactical side in here. I'll give you about 30 seconds to digest this, and this will give me a chance to get some water. Cool. So one of the more important things to do, and again, in this field, we're all very humble. Oftentimes I find analysts, especially those who have more introverted tendencies, will not be great self-advocates. And I again question why. You do amazing work every day. Why would you not be proud of, oh, well, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. Humble brags are totally fine, right? Same thing though, find your chat. Find those individuals who can support you, whether that's in a mentorship capacity or not, or just somebody on your team. Vocalize what your ambitions are. Oh, I want to grow in this area. Cool. Now I know that. Now I can actually flag opportunities. I could flag information that I think might be relevant to you. There's a deluge of information out there and it's really hard to stay on top of. So best we can, rely on each other, rely on the community. Again, I've kind of created this self-promotion cycle for you here as kind of a cognitive model that might be helpful. I'm going to tell you a little story about how you can put this into practice. So some of you might be familiar with some of these characters on the slide. If not, this is from Zelda Breath of the Wild. Link awakens from a 100-year slumber, disoriented and dazed, does not remember who he is or what he's supposed to do, starts hearing voices in his head. His voices end up being from Princess Zelda and others, realizes really quickly that the kingdom of Hyrule is in demise. It is up to him and potentially others to help reconstitute, to save the kingdom from Calamity Ganon. So along the way, he plans out his goal: help save the kingdom of Hyrule, help save the princess who's entrapped by Calamity Ganon. Along the way, he recruits friends, he recruits allies who help add additional fortitude to weapons. He learns how to make elixirs, different food items, again, helps the fortification. He gets guidance from sages. He recruits and also allies himself with various champions commanding the divine beasts to help him meet his ultimate goals, to help him position him for success against that final epic battle against Calamity Ganon. So this is a, well, cheesy, great example of how you can apply this process. I have a very simplistic mind. I like checklists. Checklists help me really quickly. I put checklists on my board. I put checklists on my wall. There is a career planning checklist for you as I start to wrap up the presentation. You can see, it starts with you. It starts with creating a self-inventory. It starts with identifying goals. It starts identifying those skills and experiences that you want to build to. If you have to go external when you're doing your due diligence and your soul searching and your discovery process, identifying what the cost is going to be, not just monetary cost, but cost in which you are not going to be actually a resource that could work. All along the way, identify those peers who can help you, who can help advocate for you, whether that's a mentor, whether that's just individuals on the team. Peer mentors are a fabulous resource. I have so many peer mentors and I've learned so much from all of them, some of which are in the room here too. Right? Create timelines, help draft your own career roadmaps. Use that as a way to start a conversation, one that you will frequently revisit with your leadership team. And the text is not showing up. Fabulous, cool. In the PDF version of this presentation, you will see I've given you a slew of different references here, as denoted by these bullet points that you can actually see, but the text that you can't. The one I will call attention to is actually visible. So Sierra just released this last week on her start.me page. It is a 5-year planning, essentially PDF book, very helpful as you kind of move forward in your own progression. With that, I am John Doyle. Thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate the opportunity.